All right, so for this part of the making generalizations about fractions, multiplying by fractions, I'm going to want you to use this page about the forum, because we didn't use that page for the forum. You recorded your Flipgrid. To make some, you're going to make some notes about what I'm showing you, and then you're going to use the next page to copy down a chart that we're going to make. Well, maybe not a chart. And then you need to come and find me so that I give you a copy of this fraction grid. You're going to be doing an investigation today about some generalizations we're going to make to help you in understanding what it means to multiply fractions together, multiply fractions and whole numbers together. And so by the end of this, you should have a really good understanding of what's happening. And you're going to do a worksheet, this reasoning about multiplying with fractions. So we're going to try and get all of this finished today so that you are prepared and ready and confident for your assessment tomorrow on skill 3, multiplying fractions together and solving word problems. All right, so I'm about to show you some equations, some fractions times fractions equations with the products, and I want you to think about and answer these 3 questions on that forum page. So do you see any patterns? What do you think the equations have in common? And how are the fractions being multiplied related to their product? So when we look at those factors on one side of the equation, and then we have the equal sign, we have the product over there, what do you notice between that product and the original fractions over here? You look at those fractions, look at that product, fractions, product, fractions, product, see what you see. And here is the equations to study. Is right here. So I'm actually going to just, I guess, pause the video, and I want you to take some time, and I want you to study what you're looking at, answer the questions. Maybe I can have both up here. Hold on a second. All right, so here we go. So here are the equations. Over there, you see the questions on the forum page, the page that says here, multiplying fractions forum. I want you to write your observations and what you see here. Okay, so let's go back to there. You can pause the video and go. All right, so I'm going to start talking about what I think are the 3 most important things that you should have noticed. Okay, when it comes to patterns, what they have in common, and the products. Okay, number 1, every single product that we see. Let me turn on my laser pointer. 1/6, 2/2, 3/16, 1/8, 1/12, 1/8, 1/6, 1/3, 3/8, 1/2, 3/8, 5/12, 9/16. Every single product is less than 1. Okay, every single product is less than 1. What's another thing that I hope you had noticed? I hope you noticed looking at all these that all we do, one way to get the answer is multiplying the numerators together and the denominators. So 1 times 5 is 5, 2 times 6 is 12. Let's look over here. 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 4 is 8. Let's look over here. 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 6 is 12. So that's one of the ways we can figure out these problems. It's not the only, that's not what we want you to only be able to do. We also want you to be able to draw it out. Okay, that's going to be very important. To master the skill is doing a visual representation. This is one way to do it, one way to get an answer. We also need you to know how to, what this stuff looks like with fractions. You got to know how things look like. And the third thing that I hope you found out is that the product is less every time than both of the factors, all right? 1/16 is less than 1/4. 2/12 is less than 2/3 and 1/4. 3/16 less than 3/4 and 1/4. 1/8 less than 1/4, it's less than 1/2. 3/8 is less than 1/2, less than 3/4. So I'm going to give you some problems to think about and investigate. And what I want you to do is think, every time we use this stuff, do we have these 3 things? So I do want you to put these titles. All the products are less than 1. You don't have to do them as big as mine. I just tried to do it in a way that you could see this. This idea of multiplying numerators and denominators, and that will give you the product. And this idea that the product is less than both things being multiplied. So we're going to investigate these claims to see if they are true all of the time, some of the time, most of the time, when it depends. All right. All right, so at this point, you need to find me to get the fraction grid sheet so that you can investigate these 6 examples. So we're looking at fraction by whole number, and fraction by mixed number. And we're going to investigate the generalizations we just made, that all the products are less than 1, that we can multiply numerators and denominators, and that the product is less than both of the fractions or both factors being multiplied. So what you should do right now is, let's do this in order. Leave this screen up. So you're going to pause it. You're also going to have that fraction grid paper so you can solve some problems. And then after you solve all the problems, kind of look at their statements and you decide, is it true all the time, some of the times, most of the times, depending on things. And then I'm going to go over the things that you should have understood and realized by the end of this. So I am now going to go over the things that you should have realized by doing these problems. So if you have not finished the problems, please do not watch the rest of this so that you can come to an understanding before I share the understandings with you. That's going to be a very important piece of your learning, okay? So if you have not yet paused to solve all of this, this is your last opportunity to make that ethical choice and effective for your learning. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. All right, so our first claim, all the products are less than 1. Hopefully you realize this is true for any time we are multiplying by fractions. So if both of our factors are fractions, it's always going to be less than 1. All right, it's always going to be less than 1. And they're always going to be less than what we started with, right? That third one, this kind of proves when both of our factors are fractions, our answer is going to be less than both fractions, okay? And it's going to be less than 1. What about the idea of multiplying numerators by denominators? Does that always work? It sure does. It always works. You do have to do a good job. So one of these things that we have to understand too, like when we are looking at whole numbers, one of the ways we can look at a whole number, like 2/3 times 2, every whole number is 2 over 1. I shouldn't say 2 over 1. It's the number over 1 because it's 2 groups of 1 whole, or it's 3 groups of 1 whole if it's 3. If it's 10, it's 10 groups of 1 whole. It's 10 over 1. So you can arrange that fraction like that. So if we look at 2/3 times 2, that's 2/3 times 2 over 1, or 4/3. Okay, so this is true every single time. If you have like a mixed fraction, like 1.5, you can turn that into what? 3/2. So you have 2/3 times 3/2 is 6 over 6, which will give you 1. So this always works. What about that the product is less? Depends. Okay, it depends. If I have a fraction and a whole number, my answer is definitely going to be less than the whole number. It's not necessarily going to be less than the fraction. So when we have a fraction and a whole number, or a number greater than 1, the answer is probably going to be either be equal to the fraction, like if it's 3/4 times 1, that's 3/4, or it's going to be greater. Okay, the answer is always going to be less than the whole number. It's always going to be less than the mixed number. Always, always, always. Whenever we're multiplying one number, okay, by a fraction less than 1, our answer is always going to be less than that number, okay? Always going to be less. So hopefully at this point, you have some really powerful understandings of fractions and multiplying by them so that you can look at any problem, like that one with the ketchup stain and we don't know what number's there. You should be able to know that it doesn't matter what's number there. If I have a fraction over here, my answer is going to be less than this number. It's always going to be less, okay? It might not be less than the fraction. It will if this number is a fraction, okay? But it's definitely always going to be less than the number, than the hidden number. Always, always, always. Hopefully you feel prepared. I will add some IXL to this so that you can practice more if you want. Hold on a second. No, we got a whole thing to do, don't we? Obviously, this is a pretty long lesson. So if you don't have time to do the reasoning about multiplying with fractions worksheet right now, then you can do that tomorrow. So let's take a look. I'm going to set this up for you, though. So we got to look at each thing that says right equal to, greater than, or less than to make each statement true. And so we look at, let's do number one together. So 3 times 45 equals B. B is going to be equal to 3, less than 3, or greater than 3. B is going to be less than 45, greater than 45, or equal to 45. Well, 3 times 45, these are two whole numbers. So B is going to be greater than both. When we're doing whole number multiplication, our product is always greater than both factors. All right. So now you can either do the rest of this on your own or do one box and then unpause it to see how it went and go from there. So let's look at number 2. This is 3 times 1 equals C. So that the product C, what is the relationship to 3 and what is the relationship to 1? C is going, whenever we multiply by 1, it's going to be equal to that other number, and it's going to be greater than 1. It's going to be greater. Now we have 3/4 times 1. So A is going to be what relationship to 1 and what relationship to 3/4? To 1, it's going to be less than 1 because we're multiplying by a fraction. A is going to be equal to 3/4 because we're multiplying by 1. What about here? 2 fractions. P, what's going on here? Now we have 3 options. P is going to be what to 3/7, what to 4/5, and what to 1. Less for all of them. P is going to be less for every single thing. Okay, because when we multiply by 2 fractions, it's definitely going to be less than 1, and it's going to be less than both of our fractions. What about here? We have a mixed number times a fraction less than 1. What's going to happen? Definitely going to be less. 5/6, it's going to be greater than 5/6, and it's going to be greater than 1. Okay, again, when we have that whole, when we have a number greater than 1 over here, okay, it's definitely going to be less, or it's going to be less than what we started with because we're not looking at one whole of it. It's going to be greater than this 5/6, and it's going to be greater than 1. All right, what about here? 6/17 times 7. Same sort of thing here. It's going to be greater than 6/17. It's going to be less than 7. Ooh, what about 2? 42/17. That's going to be greater than 2. It's going to be greater than 2. All right, choose the pair of fractions that must have a product less than 1. Okay, which 2 of these have to have a product less than 1? All right, so I know right away that this is going to be less than 1. This is both greater than 1. This can't be less than 1. These are both greater than 1. This can't be. So I'm guessing this one is going to be. No, it's just one. Okay, pair of fractions. Okay, so it's this one. I thought they were saying there was 2 problems. No, so it's this one. So 5/8 times 2/3. So we have 5/8 times 2/3. Numerator times numerator, 10. Denominator times denominator, 24. 10/24 is definitely less than 1. Here, this is 14/8, so that's greater than 1. Again, so we have 3/2 times 3/2, which is 9/4, greater than 1. And then we have 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 2/3 is 2. So that's going to be 8, right? Is that right? All right, so here it is. So again, now I will say about the IXL, if you don't feel comfortable multiplying 2 fractions together and mixed fractions and everything, you can do some practice. You should feel ready and confident for the assessment. That will be your next day. Enjoy yourselves. Happy learning. Bye.